Back in 1932, there was no known cure for syphilis. People died of this disease, and the world was scrambling to study it and find a cure. But while this happened, a lot of things went wrong, especially during the Tuskegee study, where hundreds of black male study participants were left without proper care. People went blind, got mental impairment, or worse, died. To truly understand this insane story, we have to go back to its origin. The Oslo study of untreated syphilis published its findings on the pathologic symptoms of untreated syphilis in several hundred white males in 1928. This was a retrospective study, since researchers cobbled together information from the histories of individuals who had previously contracted syphilis but had gone untreated for some time. The United States Public Health Service syphilis study at Tuskegee group chose to expand on the Oslo work by doing a prospective study to supplement it. The Tuskegee University Public Health Service syphilis study began as a 6-month descriptive epidemiological study of the pathology associated with syphilis in the Macon County population. The researchers participating in the study reasoned that they were not harming the guys in the trial because they were unlikely to ever obtain therapy. At the time, it was thought that the effects of syphilis were determined by the race of the people infected. Syphilis, according to doctors, had a greater impact on African Americans' cardiovascular systems than on their central neurological systems. The researchers included 600 disadvantaged African American sharecroppers in the trial. 399 of these men had latent syphilis, with 201 males not infected serving as a control group. The men were promised free medical care as an inducement to participate in the study, but were duped by the PHS, which never informed subjects of their diagnosis, despite the risk of infecting others and the fact that the disease could lead to blindness, deafness, mental illness, heart disease, bone deterioration, central nervous system collapse, and death. Instead, the guys were told that they were being treated for bad blood, a slang term for a variety of diseases such as syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. The name referred to a group of ailments that were a prominent cause of death in the southern African American community. At the start of the investigation, prominent medical textbooks advised treating all cases of syphilis because the implications were severe. Treatment at the time included arsenic-based chemicals such as arsphenamine, marketed as the 606 formula. Subjects were observed for 6 to 8 months before being treated with modern treatments such as Salvarsan, 606, mercurial ointments, and bismuth, which were marginally successful but exceedingly dangerous. Furthermore, participants in the trial were given disguised placebos, inefficient methods, and diagnostic procedures that were misrepresented as syphilis or bad blood therapies. Throughout, patients were unaware of the underlying goal of the research doctors, which was to examine the natural course of untreated syphilis. Clinicians may have treated all syphilitic participants and ended the trial, or they could have separated a control group for penicillin testing. Instead, they continued the study without treating any of the volunteers. They withheld treatment and penicillin information from the subjects. Furthermore, scientists barred participants from accessing syphilis treatment facilities that were open to other inhabitants in the area. The researchers reasoned that the knowledge gathered would benefit humanity. Nevertheless, it was later uncovered that the doctors harmed their subjects by failing to provide them with adequate treatment after it was detected. The research was dubbed the longest non-therapeutic experiment on human beings in medical history. Doctors sent participants a false letter headlined "Last Chance for Special Treatment" to ensure that they would show up for potentially risky, unpleasant, diagnostic, and non-therapeutic spinal taps. The first clinical results from the U.S. Public Health Service syphilis study at Tuskegee were released in 1934, and the first major report was presented in 1936. This was before the discovery of penicillin as a safe and effective syphilis therapy. The study was not kept secret, as reports and datasets were made available to the medical community throughout its course. During World War II, 256 of the afflicted people registered for the draft and were later confirmed with syphilis at military induction camps and ordered to get syphilis treatment before being accepted into the armed forces. PHS researchers stopped these guys from receiving therapy, robbing them of the potential of a cure. From a scientific standpoint, von der Leer noted, this study is extremely important. It is one of the final opportunities for medical research to perform such a study. Dr. Murray Smith requested that these guys be removed from the list of draftees in need of treatment to continue this study on an effective basis. Later, Smith, who was a local PHS representative involved in the study, wrote to Vanderleer to inquire about what should be done with patients who tested negative for syphilis at the time of enrollment in the study and were being used as control subjects but later tested positive when registering for the draft. So far, we are keeping the study positive patients from receiving treatment. Is a control patient of any use to the study if he has syphilis? Should we deny treatment to control the patient who has developed syphilis? According to Vanderleer, such cases have lost their value to the study. Unless you hear from Dr. Austin V. Dybert, who was in direct command of the study, there's no reason why these patients should not be provided adequate care. Penicillin has been the primary treatment for syphilis by 1947. The United States government funded many public health programs to establish rapid treatment centers to eradicate the disease. When venereal disease eradication efforts came to Macon County, study researchers stopped their patients from participating. Although some of the men in the research received arsenical or penicillin treatments elsewhere, this did not amount to adequate therapy for the majority of them. Only 74 of the test volunteers were still alive at the end of the study in 1972. 28 of the initial 399 men died of syphilis, 100 died of complications, 40 of their wives were infected, and 19 of their children were born with congenital syphilis. The disclosure of study failures by whistleblower Peter Buxton in 1972 resulted in significant revisions in U.S. law and regulation affecting the protection of clinical trial participants. Informed consent, diagnostic communication, and correct reporting of test results are now required for studies. The question, of course, on everyone's mind, including mine, is if this would be done the same way if they were white American citizens. Although it will probably always officially be denied, it seems like this study has been conducted in a way that screams the opposite. On May 16th of 1979, Bill Clinton formally apologized and held a ceremony at the White House for surviving Tuskegee study participants. He said,
"What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry."
Maybe the craziest part of the research I did to find this story is the fact that this wasn't the first unethical syphilis study according to History.com. President Obama apologized back in 2010 for another US-sponsored experiment that was conducted decades earlier in Guatemala. About 700 men and women were infected with syphilis for a study, but the worst part, it was without their knowledge or consent. Human history is riddled with these kinds of insanely unethical studies and research. What are some that you know of? Let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to show your support, and also click here if you want to learn more about the story of Josef Mengele, the man that conducted the most inhumane experiments on his victims during the Second World War.